Welcome to Making Our Way Forward, a podcast where we share compelling life stories and learn from the experience of everyday entrepreneurs. At NACCE, we celebrate diversity and invite you to join the conversation as we talk to entrepreneurs and leaders from all walks of life. We hope that by telling their stories, we bring you inspiration, empower you to take action, and ignite entrepreneurship in your community.
Hi, this is Jeff Smith, Director of Innovation and Equity, here again with Making Our Way Forward. So excited to be with Lea Strickland today. She does some of everything, everyone, but she is a recognized and respected business consultant, speaker, author, columnist, and radio show host. She has published over 800 articles in national and international publications, 6 books. Lea has developed over 100 business webinars, workshops, and courses focused on sound business practices, strategy, and governance. And that's just a few things that she does. So, Lea, we are super excited to have you here with us today on Making
Thanks
Our
for
Way.
having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Sure. So, Lea, as I'm looking and as I've had an opportunity to talk to you and read about your work, one of the things also I wanted to mention that you are the president and CEO of Focus Resources, founder, board chair for and president for Diversity Financial Fund. So, my question to you is, what motivates you and inspires you to do this work?
I'm just wired this way. I never did like the traditional babysitting jobs. I started my first business job when I was like 13.
Wow.
So it was, yeah. So I was blessed. My dad had friends that had businesses, and my dad periodically had his own business, and I would get involved in those. So I just kind of always knew it was about business and finding the answers and businesses of all sizes. So fascinated with the huge companies like Ford Motor Company, and I've worked those. And then having my own small business now for nearly 20 years, which is completely a shock that it's been almost 20 years. But it's the variety, it's the challenge, it's the creativity part of it, and getting to mold it into whatever I want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I say, I do a lot of things, but I do one thing actually, and it's business.
Mm-hmm.
And that encompasses so much and has so much variety to it that if I want to be writing about it or speaking about it, what kind of clients do I want to take? I use that creative and the logical side of my brain, which is perfect for me to keep it new, keep it fresh, and keep it having an impact so that businesses, small or large, are doing the right things to have the biggest impact for their community, their stakeholders, their employees, and making those differences is what's important.
Yeah. Well, as I said, as I have gotten familiar with some of your work, another thing that I really noticed is I was like, there seems to be a focus also on leadership development and human development. And I'm like, it seems like she loves people. So anyway, I'm going to ask you a few questions about that later. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about the Diversity Financial Fund.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to tell people what that is. So it was founded in 2020, and it focuses on developing and supporting underserved, underrepresented, and underestimated, I like that, populations throughout the United States to start and grow businesses in their communities. DFF provides business literacy and related programs to the target community members. And so I wanted to ask you, what do you hope to accomplish? Well, tell us a little bit more about Diversity Financial Fund, and then what do you hope to accomplish through this particular part of your work?
With businesses, with my clients, whether it's male or female, rural, inner city, wherever we are geographically, and wherever we are in establishing our businesses, there are obstacles that we create, and there's obstacles that the system and society creates intentionally or unintentionally. And so that's why we started the entire diversity project, or inclusion project as it has become. And one of the foundations that I recognized, I've been wanting to start a bank to serve these communities and other entities for over 20 years now. And the problem was, even if we get a level playing field in organizations and coming in, the starting point for everybody isn't the same, right? So we don't have the same financial resources. We may not have had exposure to how businesses are supposed to operate, or staffing and legal things. And there's a lot of expense in learning how to be in business. So you're excited to have a product or a service, and that freedom that can come, and independence that can come from owning your own business. And suddenly you're realizing, well, I have to do local laws, and there's state stuff, and there's federal stuff, and there's this tax stuff over here, and then there's this other tax stuff over here. And if you don't know what you don't know, you don't have a starting point to get out there and compete. So many of the companies I work with want government contracts and things. And so they may qualify from being an underserved or underrepresented business. And so they might get a preference to contract there. But when the government comes and says, well, now show me that you're a legitimate business, that you have the funding to stay in business, that you have the capability to do this, that you're producing financial statements, that there's all of these requirements. And then when you sign on that dotted line and saying, yes, I have those, it means something. And it's not just simply saying, okay, I have QuickBooks. Well, QuickBooks isn't enough, as great as it is. There's a lot of things around that. And so many of these organizations don't get to participate because their starting point is they didn't know those things they needed to have to be considered a legitimate business capable of executing on a contract. And so, I have conversations with several other nonprofits that have started in the area that are serving strictly the Black community, and in particular women-owned Black businesses. And because there's a preference there for contracting and things. But the things we got into those conversations was like, okay, they started the business and they got the contract, but they literally passed that contract off to somebody else to do it, which they're not allowed to do, right? So, but they didn't know, right? So here's brand new businesses that may start an accounting or bookkeeping service, or it may be HR, it may be any number of things. They get the contract and suddenly they're $1 million business, but they're not really $1 million business, because when the government finds out they're not actually performing the work, which is part of the requirement of the contract, it's actually fraud against the government. And there's all these other issues. So what we're trying to do with Diversity Financial Fund is provide those educational business literacy services, so that when someone says government contracting, all the strings that come along with that. That you understand the legalities and the differences between different legal entity types. I've actually was doing this with a law student the other day, and they've had a corporate law class, and so we're setting up a consulting practice. And I was explaining to him the differences. He goes, I took this law class and I know all the legal entity types, but no one ever told me the impact of the differences from running the business, right? And so it's those conversations that we have to have. And it's in certain communities, and I'm going to say in the Black community in particular, COVID hit that business community so hard that more than 50% of the businesses have closed and won't come back. Well, that's not one income, because in that community, it could be mom and dad, brothers and sisters, kids. It's the entire family employed in a lot of these businesses. So everything went away. And how do you come back from that? And it's one business after another in these communities. And so that's what we wanted to focus on, was making sure that we're getting that starting line, that educational foundation, the mechanics and the language of business embedded in these organizations, so that when they go to a bank, they go somewhere for funding, or they're seeking a grant, or they're receiving a grant even under some of the government programs that have come out of COVID, that they know what they can and they can't do with it, and how they're going to maximize that. And that's just it's not textbook learning. It's practical. If you need to read a financial statement, we want you to read your financial statement, right?
Right.
If you're going to do social media, we want to talk about your community that you're connecting into and doing all those things. And so it's a bigger conversation about, yes, we want to address the playing field for competition in business, but we also want to address those starting points, which I think is the biggest gap in people being able to participate and compete equally in that level playing field that we're all seeking to get things out there. And so that's Diversity Financial Fund works with on a cohort model, bringing in different small businesses that want to start or have started to address their issues and have a peer support group to engage in that. And then there's a lot of one-on-one and on-demand content that we provide them to.
Right. That sounds wonderful. I love how you talked about kind of addressing the gaps in knowledge. I, I would ask you to, how would you, someone, when you think about entrepreneurship, bringing your ideas to the table and bringing, services and products, sometimes it's like your baby.
Yeah,
And
it
so,
is.
so how do you, people from vulnerable populations who might struggle with, distrust for multiple reasons, and the fear of being able to share out or even to be able to receive knowledge, what are some of the things that you would say to an individual who might be in that place, or communities who might be in that place of they have ideas, they have things they want to share, but for whatever reason there's a sense or a lack of trust, or a fear of kind of bringing those things to the table?
Yeah, so it's about, and I know when I started my business 20 years ago, and being a woman in my profession, I was a lot of times then 20 years ago the only woman in the room. And I remember starting my business and being told, oh, you'll have to change your personality to have a business. And I'm like, well, this is my personality. This will be my brand. So whoever you are, and as we have it in the language of your authentic self, if you spend too much energy trying to be something that society or other people tell you to be, it doesn't come across authentically. And so something's off in those relationships. So I tell everyone, be who you are, play to the strengths that God, from my perspective, that God gave you. He wired you a certain way with a certain personality, a certain set of interests and things. So embrace that. And then we build the balancing factors, is what I like to say, in the team that comes around you, right? So I am a person that will never make a cold call. I don't do sales through cold calls, right? So 20 years is not that. But other people have built their business doing that because that's their skill set, and they'll do those cold calls. So it's playing to those strengths and saying, you're fine just the way you are. Sometimes there's things that we do have to, for etiquette, things, language, foul language, those kind of offensive language, those kind of things we watch. But other than those types of things that would exclude you from that, we're working on that inclusive conversation of you're authentically you. This is the business you're bringing to it. And then what do we build that business, and how do you build it around you to play to your strengths, and hire people and surround yourself with people that use their strengths that are complementary to yours, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I will never make my clients and tell them they have to come out of their labs. If being in the lab and doing the research is their thing, and they still want to be CEO of their technology company, it's like, okay, then there's a difference. Because if you're a CEO, there's a lot of things that come along with it. You're the face, you're the voice, you don't like public speaking, you got to go out and raise the money. So let's be realistic. Where are you happiest, and what are you doing that only you can do for your business? In that case, those researchers, they're the only one that can develop that technology, that product that they are building that business around. Then why am I taking 1 minute of your time more than I have to away from the thing only you can do, right? And so it's having those conversations, saying, okay, you don't like talking to people. Well, then we're not going to make you head of sales, and you probably don't want to be CEO of your own company, right?
Right.
So there's just different things that we're gonna come around and say, be you.
Yeah.
Form a team of other people that are authentically them. Don't waste your time trying to be what someone tells you and how it's going to work. Because I remember all of those gentlemen that sat in the room and told me my business would never work and why. And I said, okay, that's fine, but this is me. It's going to have to work. If it doesn't, fine, I'll go get a job somewhere else. Well, 20 years later, their businesses don't exist.
Right.
And they would constantly call me and say, well, how are you getting all these clients? And I'm like, I'm writing articles. Well, I can't do that. I'm doing speaking engagements. Well, I can't do that. I'm doing it. And I was like, well, you're choosing not to, or you can't. Well, no, my company wouldn't let us do that. I said, then, I can tell you all the secrets.
Mm-hmm.
But if you guys don't get out of your own way, then there's nothing about it. And so my business literally grew. I looked around and said, okay, I don't like cold calls. So what am I doing?
Right.
I wrote an article.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, people tell you how to write, your articles and those kind of things. Me, I sat down and I call it brain dumping. I dump out the topic. I'm going to write it, then I'll format it, whatever. That first article that one of my clients had me turn on to the opportunity, I had it published in less than a week with a national magazine, right?
That's amazing.
And that was something that is my bent and that kind of stuff. And so I got them, I was like, oh, that was pretty easy. So let me reach out to local publications and see if they'd be interested in content. And they were like, I said, well, I have this national article coming out. I was wondering if you needed content, and everybody needs content, right? And I would sit down and I would brain dump these articles, and I would send them an inventory of maybe 10, 15 articles and say, let me know when you need more, or if you like, whatever.
Right.
And they gave me a byline. They put the company out there. And at one point on one of the outlets, my face was literally on their website and their page, their publication, every day for 5 years.
That's amazing.
And so that playing to your strengths is what it's about, forming those businesses. So the fact that you're not something, you just have to bring somebody that is that something in. Be your strength. Be the salesperson. Be the writer. Be that technology researcher. Be the coder. Whatever it is that you want to be in business and passionate about, that's what you should be doing, and using that energy and not expending energy trying to be something you're not. If you maximize who you are,
right,
and hire out the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Like one example, my accountants have always asked, why, if you're so, to do your taxes, you can do your, and I said, but I hate doing taxes. Right.
Right.
And I'm like, me spending 4 hours doing my taxes or 10 hours, whatever it's going to take, doesn't make sense. I don't like it. Yes, I can do it. They charge less than I charge my clients. So I'm every hour I spend doing my taxes is an hour I'm not billing to a client.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of the trade-off. So what are you going to invest in your company, and be the authentic you, whatever that is. If you're from the South Side of Chicago, you're from Baltimore, you're a true heart deep in the South, South Texan, whatever, that becomes part of who you are and part of your business and that brand. And that's what's going to drive success.
Yeah.
And that's what we tell every entrepreneur that comes into the program.
I absolutely love that. Again, as I'm listening to you, I'm like, she's a human incubator. Like, she is a people builder, and she calls for people's gifts and talents and creates space for them to be them authentically, and to be able to create from that space. I think that's wonderful.
One of the hardest things, though, for people to get over is thinking that saying they don't know something or they're not good at something somehow diminishes them.
Right.
Rather than saying, I'm not good at that and you are, I'm going to let you shine at that. And here's the parameters, right? And so we put those parameters around everybody. And then if everybody's doing what they were meant to do, everybody does so much more.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. I have to ask you, I'm interested in your work, particularly also with veterans and or entrepreneurs with disabilities. So can you talk to me about your work with each of those groups?
So the veterans, I like to say, are a great microcosm of the entire population. They come from everywhere. Every economic background, every ethnic background. Some people were born here. Some people are, first generation. Some people have been here forever. And they have service, they've served. They have possibly, with the veterans, they may have a physical issue. They may have PTSD. There's all kinds of different things in there. So they truly represent the best of who we are in the country, and those that have some of the biggest challenges coming out. So in working with them, it's how Focus developed the programs that we're actually using and licensing to Diversity Financial Fund, in that the people need to be met where they're at,
right,
for what they can do. So if you have a traumatic brain injury, it does not mean you can't have a business. So it means we put different tools around it. I'm a migraine sufferer. And I have those tools that I use to make sure I keep track of things and those things. And so that's what we develop with people. And sometimes it may be voice recordings and reminders. It might be checklist systems, a to-do list in Microsoft. It's appointment reminders and setting up processes that they immediately create the list of things they have to do with directions and things in there. So with the veterans, what is fun is it can be someone who's just a really big car guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he might have been a mechanic in the service. He comes out and that's what he wants. He wants his own garage doing high performance cars or customization of motorcycles or whatever. And so that's what they're focusing on. Or it might be a woman veteran who doesn't have any visible issues in her normal day-to-day life. She wasn't exhibiting anything, but she went and got a job. And every time she stepped in the door of the business, she couldn't talk. Her voice would go away. She could whisper to her boss, but to have a communication with anybody else just didn't work. And so it was coming and finding the right businesses for them. The mechanic, all he wants to do is under the hood or drawing up plans or that kind of stuff. He doesn't want
Right.
to do any accounting. He doesn't, he's going to go on the hunt at the junkyard for that one piece that he needs to, rebuild something. And so it's making sure that we put a team together. The mechanic, it's his wife. She likes detail. And so it was getting her up to speed on how to do the accounting and the invoicing and all that kind of stuff. For the woman that couldn't speak when she was work, it was making a home-based business where she could do virtual admin, some website graphic design and stuff from home. She makes more money from home, doesn't have to have her kids in daycare, can talk on the phone, can Zoom, can do anything, right? And she has that comfort level that stress of stepping into someone else's workplace with things that were beyond her control that robbed her literally of her voice.
Mm-hmm.
We designed around it. Somebody wants to be a farmer. Or one guy wanted his restaurant in his small town because there weren't any restaurants. And it's like, why are there no restaurants, right? Well, people ate at home or, it just isn't convenient to drive. And so it was like, okay, before you do brick and mortar, let's do a food truck, right? And then he's like his family recipes. And so he could go to the football game, the Friday night football game, wherever the home team was going to be and just follow him in the food truck, right? There were just so many different ways to adapt to what was it they wanted to be in business to do? What did it mean to be in their communities, right? And so we can meet anybody in any location at any stage with who they are and what their dream is and do the practical steps of here's your vision, but how does it translate into reality?
Right.
What are these steps? Do you need to be a corporation? What's it mean to be a sole proprietor? What are all the differences? And why does it matter? Insurance, liability issues, who can work, all that kind of stuff. And it's taking each of those topics and giving them what we call Velcro on the brain for how it applies to them. Because you can sit down and you can read all about insurance. Life insurance is perfect, right? You
Right.
read it and it's like you still don't know, right? How does it apply to me and which one do you want?
Right.
And that's a lot of things in business. You read it, it's like, okay, debit and credit. Well, I'm not going to talk to you about debits and credits. I'm going to talk to you about when you make a sale, it increases your revenue and it gets recorded a certain way. And it's taking away the lingo, the jargon, the things that make people say, well, I can't do that. Well, yeah, you can if we just take away the fact that debit means debit goes on the left and credit means credit goes on the right. It doesn't mean plus or minus. It doesn't do anything. And so through just conversations and exploring, we're giving them the practical, applicable stuff of here's the concept, but this is what it means to you and your business and the decision you need to make, right? And it's preserving and having everyone think through things before they spend money to make those, and you're going to make the mistakes, right?
Right.
So with the veterans, we start sometimes as much as 3 years before they're going to come out of the service.
Okay.
So they know they're exiting and they have a dream. Well, where do you want that dream to be, right?
Right.
During that transition period. And then there's veterans that have been out 20 or 30 years and find themselves suddenly unemployed and unemployable because the skill set they have doesn't work in modern corporations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, well, what business does it still work in? Or what excites you that you would want to learn? Because, people retired out of the service at 45 with 20 years, a long time, at one point now it's 30 years, but you can come out and have multiple careers just because you're 65 or 70 and you still need an income. That doesn't mean you can't own your own business. What is it?
Right.
And it's going through those conversations, and the entrepreneurs with disabilities are near and dear to my heart because I have a lot of physical challenges and things with migraines and other things. And so again, it's saying just because you have that challenge doesn't mean you can't have a business. It's finding the right team, it's finding the right tools. And and it's also giving yourself permission to say, if I have to cancel something because I have a migraine, that's not a bad thing, right? It's
Right.
just a fact. If I can't go to an event, which we run into a lot as the veterans and people with disabilities, someone picks a venue and it's not handicap accessible, right? Even though it's a new remodel or stuff, and somehow they've gotten away and not had to do the Americans with Disabilities accessible. And so someone puts all their energy to go somewhere. It takes them an hour to get from where they park to the building, and then get to the building and find there's no handicap ramp. And if somebody helps them get up the stairs and get in the building, and they look and it's like, okay, now I have to go down 3 flights of stairs to turn around to go up 3 flights of stairs because there's no elevator. It's saying, okay, so what is that process to scope out? You just flat out ask, is the building handicap accessible? Where are the handicap spots? Is there an elevator? What accommodations are you making for this? And those are conversations that the entrepreneurs with disabilities, whether you're blind, hearing impaired, whatever it is, we have to address. And every business more and more has to be conscious of addressing that, even as a small business. Go to a parking lot, brand new shopping center. There's 10 handicap spots out of 400.
Right.
Is that balanced? How did that happen? Where are they? They're not anywhere near where you need to be. And it's looking at maybe sometimes the first hire a small business has is someone that literally is driving someone around or dealing with those logistics of transportation and addressing those issues. And that's just reality. And so we make those plans and say, it is all right to be an entrepreneur with a disability, whether that's from you're a veteran, it's a traumatic brain injury, it's PTSD, it's, whatever it is, from an accident, you were born that way or whatever. We can't let those things stop people from thinking that they're just as capable of being a business owner. Everyone has something they have to accommodate. It's just not always something that people will call a disability. Sometimes people just don't have a good personality to be in business.
Right. Period.
Doesn't mean they can't be in business.
Yeah.
We just have to work with that personality. And so it's like I said, by doing the veterans program for free within Focus Resources, I think it gave me the most and broadest experience of the different type of people you can interface with. Some have a lot of money, some don't. Some had leadership roles. Some just want to be in the back room up to their elbows in grease and under the hood, right? It's just,
Right.
It's that variety that's exciting to deal with and help them succeed at businesses.
I love that. It's like diversity of gift, but same entrepreneurial spirit.
Right.
So I wanted to ask you about, I saw 2 books that you wrote that kind of sparked my interest. So really quickly, I wanted you to talk about the Out of the Cubicle and Into Business, 114 questions to answer before you make the move from a corporation or university job into your own business. I know a lot of educators will be interested in that. And then the second one was Goals, Living for the Future, 10-minute success. And so could you talk really quickly about those 2?
So Out of the Cubicle and Into Business was the book I wish someone had written for me when I started my business, right? So I looked around, it's like, okay, how do you do this? And I came out of businesses and the business side, so accounting, finance, strategic planning, all that stuff. So I had business skills, but bringing those out and into a sales mechanism of it being a small business and things like that. And people don't realize every decision you make as a small business owner is personal, it's professional, it's financial, and it has different impacts on it. So every time I had a question that I couldn't find the answer to, I wrote it down, right? So here was this question that didn't get an answer. And I was blessed, and I dedicated that book to one of my uncles, because he had been an entrepreneur when I was a small child. And I loved seeing his real estate ads with his name on it in the paper, right? So that was one of the things to look at. So I would send him something and he would answer some question. He'd say, well, from what you're doing, I don't know precisely, but this is what I had to deal with when I started my real estate company. And so I just collected those questions, and they're personal. It's a workbook. And so there's sections in it. And one of the things that when I published the book, several gentlemen that ran incubators in the area, I gave them copies of it. And the funniest comment was the guy told me, he said he fell asleep reading my book. And I was like, oh, and he goes, no, I couldn't put it down. He said, I need to hand this out to everybody in the incubator, because it's like S Corp or LLC, C Corp, what does that mean? And having those conversations, or how are you going to market your business? Or how much do you have to spend to start your business? So if you total up, maybe you need a laptop, computer, or website, and maybe it's $2,500. The other question that needs to be asked is, what are you living on as income, and how are you paying your bills until your business starts producing an income for you? And what are those implications? And if you have kids and a family, a spouse, are they on board for this? Because your income suddenly goes away and your hours are 14, 16 hours a day, and you can't be at the basketball game or whatever, right? Things change. So starting a business is a personal decision, it's a family decision, it's a financial decision, and it's a professional decision. And that's what that book was about.
Okay.
And then the goals book comes out because everybody's always asking me how I get so much done, right?
Right.
And so I never like to be late anywhere. So if I'm on time, I feel like I'm late. And so I would tend to arrive everywhere about 15 minutes early. I will tell you, I wrote the majority of my articles in that 15 minutes. I was waiting at a restaurant or in my car or somewhere on the technology, sitting there and doing what like I said, brain dump an article concept and have that. So I would find 10, 15 minutes here and there throughout the day. And suddenly I realized, 10 minutes a day, 6 days a week, I have an hour I put towards some kind of project. What do I want to do with the 10 minutes? And I'm not in those 10-minute things. It's trying to organize for a meeting, set an agenda, brain dump an article, do something. And so you structure, what are you going to do? You're going to set that process. So of 1 minute to figure out what you're doing, a couple minutes to organize some things, and the rest of the time I'm writing, right? And having the technology around to do that. And it's, what do you want to do? Because everybody says, I don't have the time to do that. Well, just arriving at a restaurant 15 minutes early, getting in, sitting down, and have 10 minutes to write. And on any given day when I was starting my business, I probably had 6 meetings, breakfast, lunch, coffee, tea, whatever, with people. And I carved out an hour a day, 10 minutes at a time, writing and generating these articles or doing something. And now you can do 10 minutes of social media. Go on LinkedIn, find one person to send an authentic communication to. So you can apply it a lot of different ways. Everybody thinks you have to set aside an hour or 2 hours or whatever. And then instead you can find 10 minutes. And at the end of a week, if you'd spent 10 minutes on just 6 days out of the week, you've got an hour you spent on it. If you can carve it out 2 or 3 times a day, or maybe you have 3 things you want to work on and you set aside, you find 10 minutes 3 times a day, 6 days a week, you put 3 hours towards 3 different projects. And that's just simplifying it down to just do it. Don't edit yourself. Don't second guess. What if somebody doesn't agree? What if somebody argues with you about something you said in your article? And I know I had that one. It's like, okay, what if some lawyer contacts me on this? And it happened not too long after I started writing. And I read their objection. I was like, okay, you didn't read the punctuation right. And I went back and said, I said, when you read it this way, and they're like, oh, okay, you were right then, right? And so what if you're wrong? You just have to go back and say, in the article, I said X, and after further research and a discussion with somebody, I need to clarify it to say, what's the worst thing, right? And so it's that fear that somebody will disagree, attack, whatever, that holds us back from doing as much as we can, and setting too big of a goal. What's it say? How do you eat an elephant? 1 teaspoon at a time. Well, how do you get your project done? 10 minutes at a time.
10 minutes at a time. Wow. Lee, you are a wealth of information. I literally could talk to you all day. Thank you so much. I have come away from this with just inspired. I mean, you have that entrepreneurial spirit. I love how you talk about authenticity and how that can help you to really produce both your business and products and services that you care about. And then just your care for people and being able to identify strengths and talents and create a space for people to really be their best selves. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for sharing with us. And that's the end of our podcast.
Thanks, Jeff, for having me.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that listening to this podcast will help you to explore the many ways we might define entrepreneurship. Join us every other Wednesday for more episodes as we celebrate opportunity, learn from one another, and grow together. Subscribe to this podcast, connect with us on social media, and learn more about today's speakers at NACCE.com/podcast. We look forward to making our way forward together with you.
Have you heard about our latest book, EntreEd: How Community College Entrepreneurship Creates Equity and Prosperity? This is our roadmap for building back better in 50 states and globally. In each chapter, we share the inspiring stories of everyday entrepreneurs and explain how community colleges play a crucial role in their success. Visit us at NACCE.com/ImpactEd to order your copy now and join us in this work.
Join us on July 20th in Chattanooga, Tennessee for a pre-conference leadership workshop featuring podcast hosts and NACCE leaders Jeff and Becky. Hosted in partnership with EntreEd's Master Teacher Certification. This two-part workshop is ideal for faculty members, administrators, presidents, and leaders in your institution. Participate in a Presidents for Entrepreneurship pledge signing during the provided lunch. Get more information and save your seat at NACCE.com or the link in this episode's description.